Welcome to the third episode of At Home at Highclere for Viking.TV. And I thought I'd start off down here at our lambing sheds. Most of the sheep, the ewes, give birth outside, but those who have got triplets birth here in the lambing sheds. And it's such a wonderful way to be distracted in these times. It's full of hope and full of Easter. And I think this one thinks I've got some food. And if I bend down, pick one up. And because they're triplets, they're more used to being handled, but they are so sweet. Probably only 3 or 4 days old. When they're a little bit stronger, they'll also go out on the grass. There we go, off you go. We have 1,800 ewes here, so we should have certainly over 3,000 lambs this spring. And they look so cute as they begin to jump and leap around, so I hope I can share them with you a little bit later. I thought I'd also take you into where the orphans are raised. They're doing really well. Sometimes a ewe with 3 triplets can't actually look after more than 2. So the other one is taken away and it's raised on a bottle bank over here with lots of friends. So follow me inside. Hello. Hello. I think they're all saying who's king of the castle in here. Hi. Hello. Hello. They are too cute for words, and aren't they doing well? When they're big enough, they'll also be able to be put out on the grass with everyone else. You going to come and say hello? Hello. Hello. Oh, hello. Well, thank you for joining us this evening for At Home from Highclere for Viking.TV, and I really hope you enjoyed the part outside with the lambs. They are so wonderful and such a distraction. There are so many orphans because we've actually had so many triplets for the ewes, so they can't normally look after 3 lambs, so they're left with 2, and then we look after the third, but they are all doing so well and they are such a joy to sit and to play with. But we're now back inside this wonderful house, and I hope you very much recognize the staircase. I really needed some Downton Abbey music actually as I walked down. And so many brides, both in fiction and reality, have trod round the gallery and down this staircase. And of course, in Downton Abbey, all the sisters walked down here to get married. And finally, in the last episode of the TV series, Edith got married as well, which was wonderful. So I'm going to carry on down and share some of the saloon with you today. So walking through here, we call this room the saloon. Downton Abbey called it the Great Hall, which is actually rather a good name as well, because of course this room was constructed upon an old medieval hall, which probably sat here for 800 or 900 years, being refurbished and restored. And I think that might have been the inspiration for Sir Charles Barry when he was commissioned by the 3rd Earl of Carnarvon, who's in the painting behind, to create this wonderful house, Italianate Gothic castle that we're sitting in today. It's not just the architecture, which is amazing, and I think Freya's enjoying as well, but it's also the wall coverings. It's a beautiful room with the light coming in through the windows above the staircase, which actually used to be quite a challenge for Downton Abbey because it changed during the day. I think it is so beautiful at this time of the evening. And the light also floods down from the ceiling as well through all the roof lights. And again, in Downton Abbey, they used to black the whole thing out and then artificially light it in order to have some control over it. Around the walls, it's not a wallpaper, it's actually leather wall hangings you're looking at. They are extraordinary. They're just a backdrop, and yet they're not just a backdrop. They date from Cordoba, from 1661, and they were made in Cordoba in Spain. And we can date them because there's a small piece in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and we know that it was because they were cut into squares, that they were firstly covered with gilt and then painted and then gilded and then embossed, which is why they've been dated to that particular time. And what I love is that they've been hung in this room, and then the edges along the top have just been cut out to fit the room. I can't imagine any of us having the courage to do that today. I think historic England or any other house would be really upset if we tried to do that. But they're here, and they are the most amazing backdrop. In the original drawings from Sir Charles Barry, he envisaged a much more military decoration scheme for the castle. It had more suits of armor, it was more medieval, more Gothic. And we've now got the leather wall hangings, which are supremely elegant and utterly unique. And then hanging around the gallery, some very beautiful tapestries. They're Belgian tapestries. So it's much more muted. The colors, I think, are much more gentle. And it's a wonderful home to live in today, as it would have been when it was first decorated and put in place in the middle of the 19th century, begun by the third Earl and then completed by his son, the fourth Earl. And it was the third Earl who really wanted to make sure there was the tower atop the castle, which was an incredibly extravagant and expensive afterthought. And in fact, which I might have mentioned before, it was said to be pregnant with danger to his lordship's pocket. And I think the total cost was some £24,000, which in 1842 was a huge amount of money. I don't know, I suspect many millions today. But he was trying to create in Highclere Castle a work of art. So the building was a work of art, and then the interiors were adorned with works of art, including the leather wall hangings. The arches here both frame the staircase, which I walked down, and then act as a frame as you walk down the staircase. Nothing was really left to chance. It's the detail and the craftsmanship, which I don't think we can necessarily match today. There is still some armorial decoration round the gallery, and that there's all the shields of my husband's family running round just above the wall hangings, above the wall leather, the leather of the wallpaper, hanging, going all the way around the gallery. And they show and highlight who each Earl of Carnarvon, each Herbert has married. And it begins just to one side of the fireplace with William Herbert, who married Anne Parr. And it was her sister, Catherine Parr, who was the last wife of Henry VIII. And Henry VIII asked her husband if her sister Anne and her husband William Herbert could be given an estate, and that estate was Wilton. They still have it in the family, and it was a younger son of the Herberts of Wilton who were given this estate in 1679. So my husband's been here for quite a long time. He looks very good. But joking apart, it is a beautiful room. And the next thing perhaps I wanted to share was this fireplace, which I'm sitting beside, which is pretty huge. It gives off a lot of heat, and either of my Labradors would be very happy sitting in front of it were it to be lit. But behind it is a medieval fireplace. And underneath the floor I'm sitting on are some medieval water wells. So this part of the castle certainly dates back perhaps 1,000 years. I love the feeling of walking in time. There's one more painting which I rather wanted to share with you tonight, and that's a painting of the fourth Earl of Carnarvon, which is to one side of the fireplace, and his wife, funny enough, the fourth Countess, his first wife, to the other. I've got to know a little bit more about him as I wrote a book called At Home at Highclere. The first chapter that I wrote about, I picked a whole page off the visitor's book almost by chance. It was in 1866 because I recognized so many of the names on the page. There was Disraeli, Prime Minister and Exchequer of this country. There was Lord Salisbury, also Prime Minister of this country. And there was a whole weekend set out around these extraordinary men, hosted by the fourth Earl in October 1866. He was in politics for some 40 years before he died in 1891, nearly at the end of Queen Victoria's reign. But at the bottom of this page, I began another journey, because at the bottom of the page were three signatures, which I didn't really know much about. They were three men called John A. Macdonald, George Etienne Cartier, and Alexander Galt. If any of you are from Canada, you would recognize some of the founding fathers of Canada. They were staying here at Lord Carnarvon's invitation, and he was very instrumental in helping create the bill which created the Dominion of Canada in 1867. And those three signatures were the start of another journey. And looking for papers, for archives, for diaries, it's taken me in extraordinary places. I have found a letter from Osborne House, where Queen Victoria was staying, from her principal private secretary, saying, "Dear Lord Carnarvon, the Queen approves the name Dominion of Canada." So there's all these to and fro's in these diaries, which begin to share how the bill for Canada was taken to the Houses of Parliament in February 1867. And then the Dominion of Canada was created on the 1st of July, 1867. There are some beautiful speeches by Lord Carnarvon about the beauty of Canada, of the woodland, of the waters, in his view at that point, it was the Pacific Ocean at the Atlantic Ocean. And now they know the Arctic Ocean is also very much recognized and an important part of Canada's profile today. Lord Carnarvon was also intent on creating a railway to link the west to the east of Canada, ensuring it would always go through Canadian land and it wouldn't dip into America to hold the 49th parallel. To that end, in Christmas 1866, he had an amazing American diplomat called Charles Adams to stay. His father and grandfather were president of the United States of America. He was highly regarded, incredibly intelligent, and Lord Carnarvon had asked him here to discuss the pros and the cons of the American Constitution when he was discussing the Canadian Constitution with the Canadian founding fathers. So all these men, royalty, statesmen, have all stayed in the galleried bedrooms around the saloon. You know the galleried bedrooms because one was Lord and Lady Grantham's. In our view, that's Mercia, but in Downton Abbey, it was Lord and Lady Grantham's bedroom. One bedroom, which was specifically done up for the visit of the Prince of Wales in 1895, is called Stanhope. But it was also the red silk bedroom where the Turk died in the very first series. It was later on Shirley MacLaine's bedroom. So some bedrooms were very busy. There's another bedroom which was used as Lady Edith's bedroom. So somehow the fictional and real worlds of this extraordinary castle get so mixed together, which I think is fun. It's a wonderful muddle. And then, as you've seen around this castle, there's a much, much broader estate. There's estate and there's farmland and there's the sheep, which we've shared with you today. And we're going to take other opportunities every week now to share either the lop-eared pigs, which are an endangered species, or the chickens. And I thought next week we'd also explore the garden so we can share some of the outside as well as some of the inside of this extraordinary building. This room we call the saloon, which you might think is like the Western saloon. With any luck, there might be a bar here, but sadly there isn't. And it's called the saloon from the French le salon. So as you began to approach the king, for example, in Versailles, you went through various saloons into the more inner rooms, into the chambre, into his bedchambers. And that's where you get the ladies of the bedchamber and all the different titles, which are usually inspired by the French courtly circles as well. So this was called Le Salon, the saloon. And in Downton Abbey, I think they were looking back to the medieval past of this house, as well as Julian Fellowes' inspired scripts, and they were just trying to recreate some of their own scenes in which to set many of the scenes. I suspect you would definitely recognize this from Downton Abbey. It played a part in every single episode. There was in the first series, you probably most of the characters passed through it. In the second series, it was used as a concert to raise money during the Great War, and there was a stage up that end. In another episode, Kiri Te sang here. It has got the most beautiful acoustics, and she stood in a corner, and we were lucky. She was pretending to be Dame Nellie Melba, a famous singer of the time, but of course it was Dame Tiri Canoa, who was amazing. She sang nearly all day, and it was only a few minutes on television, but it was a beautiful day and one I'll remember for the rest of my life. And in fact, every May we have a concert here. And sometimes Viking have kindly sponsored it, and we have young pianists singing and performing here. And rather like in the old-fashioned salon, we sit round here as the light falls, and it's one of the most precious evenings. And I hope in the future that some of you might join us at the next one. It's not going to take place this year, but I would love it to again take place next May, in May 2021. And Viking have such an interest in culture and in music, in literature and history. And this was a wonderful coming together of both Viking and Highclere. We've had some glorious evenings listening to music, taking the time out. And I know that's what you can also do with Debbie Wiseman. And I have so enjoyed her lectures and what she's shown us on the piano as well. I then play them never endingly after that on my phone. I'm thinking now that I'm going to move on to questions because I know there's so many questions that come in, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you. And Stella's fallen asleep throughout the whole thing. And this one, Freya, just wants a little bit more love. But she's named Freya, again, for a connection to Viking, the goddess of love. And she does, as you can see, need lots of love. And Stella's now come to shake hands as well. So I very much hope, Kat, you might throw some of the questions my way.
Yes, Lady Carnarvon. We've got a question here from Denise.
Do you want to turn around?
South Dakota.
Yeah.
She's asking, where are the lamb's mummies?
Oh, thank you, Denise. Well, I might have covered that actually, because as I mentioned, the orphans, the ewes simply couldn't support. Do you want to sit down, darling? Thank you. The ewes couldn't support 3 lambs. They can support 2, but not 3 usually. So by taking one of the lambs away, it gives the other 2 a chance to survive as well as the orphan. And what you probably didn't see is there's a great big milk bar. They have their own milk bar with masses of teats set up, and there's a continual supply of milk. And to start with, you have to help them drink the milk and push them that way. And then after that, as they get a bit bigger, they're given sort of harder food.
We now have a question from Margie in Baltimore. Was this the room where the Christmas scene and the ball was held in Downton Abbey?
Oh, Margie, you're completely right. This was where the ball was held. We've actually danced here ourselves because it's good to enjoy life as well as work hard. And we have a Christmas tree against the wall behind me every year. And we've got a wonderful Christmas schedule of events, which I hope we'll be able to share again this year, perhaps with smaller numbers. A huge Christmas tree, which goes, it's about 22, 24 foot tall. And Downton Abbey put their Christmas tree where we put ours. So overall, they tend to look at what we've done and then not reinvent the wheel, but use it for the purposes of their own story. They were actually celebrating Christmas in July. So we used to have 2 Christmases when Downton Abbey was being filmed here for the TV series, July and December. And in July, it would be a really lovely hot day of summer. And there would be about 50 or 60 people standing in the saloon to sing Silent Night, dressed in their furs. And outside, it would be sort of a beautiful 75-degree day.
Lady Carnarvon, we now have a question from Lily, who's from Rhode Island. Is there anything guests find particularly surprising on their first visit to Highclere Castle?
I think many guests and visitors tell all the guides, as well as Geordie and I, how they find it cozy and homely, as well as quite grand. There are 250 to 300 rooms in this castle, so it is quite large by any standards. But yet, I hope the rooms and all the photographs scattered everywhere, which not all of them are particularly grand. There are children there of my son and stepchildren when they were small and sweet, and little dogs and puppies. So it's all that mixture of family life and the plants and the feeling that it's a home. So that's what I wanted to create, the idea of a home, not a museum, because that's what we all have. We all have homes, and that's what we're all sharing.
I suppose this is a related question from Lark, who is in San Diego. What is your favourite room and why?
That's such a difficult question. Sometimes it's the library because I love books. And then other times it's my study, but that's such a mess at the moment that it's probably not my favouriteest room because my husband's always telling me I should clear it up and he can't go in there because he'd fall over because it's supposed to be our TV room, but it's you can hardly sit on the sofa in it. Other times I think it's when I clamber all the way above the staircases, the tower, to the very top and let myself out onto the roof and look around at this extraordinary landscape. It's God's landscape, it's nature. You look north to Oxford, you look south over the hill I know is Southampton. You're looking towards an old Iron Age fort and a hill where the Iron Age fort dates from 1500 BC. It just makes me, although I'm quite high, it gives me the feeling of being anchored in time and history and space.
Lady Carnarvon, you briefly mentioned that we're going to visit the garden next week, but Kathy from Idaho is asking what flowers are blooming right now.
Oh, Kathy, I wish you were here visiting, and I wish we had visitors here. It is so, so sad for all of us and for the gardeners and all their hard work. So we've got quite a lot of clumps of tulips, which look amazing. And my husband really tends to buy all the bulbs. And with the tulips, they sometimes have in the past got badly eaten by mice. So he now has a new system of each clump of tulips is netted. There's a whole metal mesh which goes round them early in the year. And then as this year, as in others, they're now standing up straight and they're such a profusion. And the cherry trees are out over them. I've tried to share a few photographs on my Instagram, so please do have a look there and also on my blog.
We've got a question now from Jerry in Australia. He's asking, who is in the old brown painting just behind you?
In the old brown painting is the most famous Carnarvon in many ways. It's the fifth Earl of Carnarvon, a very dashing, handsome man. And he was the man who discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. So he's the Egyptologist. He worked out in Egypt for some 16 years. He loved Egypt, its culture, its architecture, its works of art, its history. He was much liked by the people he worked with in Luxor in the Valley of the Kings. And actually, I wrote a book about his wife, Lady Almina, in the real Downton Abbey. And one of my next books I would love to write is about Lord Carnarvon, who discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun, the first global world media event. And no one's ever written a book about him. And it's also, of course, somewhere which Viking does the most marvelous Egyptian tours. So I'd love to go on a riverboat with Viking and kind of explore the background. I'm writing at the moment from memory. So this was a question about the man on the easel there, the fifth Earl of Carnarvon. And he's definitely the subject for a book coming up.
We now have a question from Mike in the USA. I guess it's related to the concerts that you're talking about. He said, I'd love to perform my show Love Songs of World War II with a special tribute to Dame Vera Lynn. That's from Mike in the USA.
How very kind. Now, we do want to go ahead. We were going to try to, Mike was very kindly asking us me a question about performing here, songs to celebrate Dame Vera Lynn and World War II. We were going to host a day here on May the 8th, which is VE Day, is the end of the Second World War in Europe. and we were going to use it to look back at history, but as ever, use history to think about it and raise money for today, for those who serve and those who save. Obviously, in the current circumstances, we've cancelled it. And we've moved it at the moment to October the 10th, because I'm just beginning to inaugurate a little history festival here. But I thought on that Saturday, we could again gather together to remember those who served in the Second World War and to raise money to say thank you to those who serve and save today. So at the moment, I haven't quite got my planning or head around it, but it would be lovely to create something very special and again, above all, share it through social media and through all media to those who cannot come here.
Lady Carnarvon, we now return to Downton Abbey. Susan from Florida is asking, do you have a character or storyline from Downton Abbey that is your favourite?
The question was about which is my favourite character or storyline in Downton Abbey, and that's from Susan in Florida. That's a really hard question. Do you know, at the moment, I keep thinking about that amazing scene at the end of series one. They're out on the lawns, and Hugh Bonneville, Lord Grantham, has just announced the beginning of World War One. Nobody knew what it would lead to or how long it would go on for, and somehow today it resonates. None of us know how long what the challenges of today's world is going to go on for. It will not go on, I'm sure, like the First World War, but it will go on for a few months as we work our way out of it. So that's one scene. Do you know, many of the scenes are outside. I also really enjoyed the fate scene, which I think might have been in series four. And it was all on the outside East Lawns. We also have a church fete here every so often on the East Lawns. So it'd be really wonderful to have another church fete, which we might do in a small way in this September to raise a little bit of money for our local churches. So I think it's some of the outside scenes actually, which I have said. There's the cricket. I love cricket. I'm not sure everybody in America loves cricket, but I do. Or maybe it's because we don't understand each other's sports as well as we should. But it's a lovely way to spend a day. So I think it's some of those outside scenes that I love. It's a lovely way of sharing Highclere.
Lady Carnarvon, we now have a question from Mike in Indiana. He asks, when do you think you might be open for tours this summer and spring next year?
Mike, thank you for asking when we might be open for tours later this year or next year. And the answer is, I suppose, how long is a piece of string? I think, like every other business, we hope that in some small way we may be able to operate, allowing more space between customers. We have got a lot of garden space, which might be very restorative to visitors. We're going to work backwards and post some of our summer tours next year, and an event called Magic of the Movies, and next September. And next spring, of course, we hope to be open. But I hope in small ways we'll be able to welcome people this summer. It may be more local friends and tourist groups than those from afar. And I hope as we go into the autumn, we can have some small, beautiful tours. And we've got a theme called Real Lives and Film Sets, which we thought would be a lovely theme to explore this autumn in small numbers. And I think Freya thinks so too. We have a pat the dog competition as well.
We now have a question from Todd, who's in Fort Lauderdale. Can you tell us about the beautiful rug?
Oh, Todd, you're asking me about the beautiful rug, and that is such a very diplomatic and flattering question, because this rug was one that Geordie and I commissioned. So we had this made for this room, I suppose, about 10 years ago now. I think just before Downton started, in fact, and it was made for us out in India, and it's made from sketches, and there's no CAD, and it's just sending out ideas of colours and themes, and praying it's going to work out. So it's each rug that we've had made is a bit of an adventure, but I think it's a lovely rug and it's wearing well. So thank you. I'm not sure this is not a very elegant way to sit. Freya, hop up. Freya, hop up. Sorry, not very elegant. Yes.
Perhaps our final question this evening from Danielle in Michigan. What animals and livestock do you have?
Danielle, what animals and livestock do we have? As you can see, we've got some dogs. These are my two youngest dogs, puppies. To my husband's surprise, we appear to have 8 dogs. I'm not really quite sure how we've got there. 4 Labradors and 4 Spaniels. We've got too many horses. I think he'd say too many dogs. We've got quite a lot of sheep, about 1,800 ewes, about 3,500 lambs. We've also got quite a few pigs now because I've been supporting an endangered pig species called the British lock pig. Ah, have you lost the sound? Ooh. Sorry, Freya, stop this. Okay, am I back on again to say goodbye? Thank you so much for your questions, and say goodbye from Stella and goodbye from Freya. I'm sorry about the last part of the interruption. Next week we're in the gardens, and I thought my husband Geordie could take you a little bit, around the gardens, probably with the help of some dogs. I'm not sure whether he's going to choose these two. And after that, I thought we might come in. I'd love to share with you the morning room, which is such a beautiful room. And in it hang many of my predecessors, many of the earlier countesses. Thank you so much for joining me on Viking TV at home at Highclere. And it's good night from Stella, and it's good night from Freya, and it's good night from me. Thank you. Thank you very much.